Despite Netanyahu's frosty White House reception, he was widely praised on Capitol Hill. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and House Republican leader John Boehner were even on the same page, saying Israel remains a strong ally of the United States. Lauren Green, Fox News.
And for more on this situation, we're joined this morning by Dr. Marc Gopin from the Institute for Conflict Analysis and Resolution at George Mason University. Dr. Gopin, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
So Benjamin Netanyahu was here for 2 days, leaves, but apparently not a whole lot accomplished. Does that surprise you?
No, this was a long time coming, and the headlines in Israel today are that he comes back ashamed and isolated.
And that seems to be part of Israel's problem right now is isolation internationally.
They've been increasingly isolated over the years, but now they're losing a significant portion of United States public opinion as well.
Tell me what I think the president and Benjamin Netanyahu had hoped to accomplish during this 2-day visit. Anything?
I'm not sure President Obama had an agenda. I think that they wanted a complete stop to the settlements in order to get to the proximity talks between Palestinians and Israelis. And it's clear that Netanyahu can't control his coalition, and particularly the ultra-Orthodox Shas that are building the settlements in East Jerusalem, or he doesn't want to. And he's ready to go it alone in order to keep his coalition alive and keep his power.
We heard from some of the lawmakers in that Lauren Green story that we just aired, and there seems to be actually disagreement, too, among members of the U.S. Congress about the United States stance on Israel. So what does that do in terms of U.S.-Israeli relations?
Well, going back 20 years, Congress has always been advocating for whatever the so-called pro-Israel lobby, AIPAC, says. And then the White House is in charge of foreign policy and regional relations.
Right.
So they're paying a heavy price in the region. And also now the military security establishment considers this a strategic threat to its troops.
General Petraeus is saying that this really could hurt the U.S.
So
military.
we're seeing a lining up, and it's also, of course, Democratic Republican politics.
Right.
Because this is a weak link in Obama's popularity if there is a rift with Israel. But 70% of the Jewish population in the United States even believes that both sides should be pressured into a deal. And so we are seeing some real shifts here in American Jewish opinion as well, wanting and believing that it's in Israel's strategic interest to compromise, have a West Jerusalem, which is huge, and the Holy City, and then at the same time preserve the East Jerusalem Arab neighborhoods for a future Palestinian state.
And so if you find that here in the United States, and yet Benjamin Netanyahu, as you said, seems to not be able to control what's going on there with his own people, what do you see happening? I mean, this, it's so funny because we talk about what's going on in the Middle East, and this is years and years and years and years and years in the making. Is there a real chance for peace?
I've worked at this for 27 years, and I can say that systematically the governments really need more people-to-people relations in order for there to be constituency on both sides for a truly nonviolent compromise and coexistence. This high-level work, which George Mitchell is a brilliant man, but it cannot go on if there's not a political constituency on the Israeli side that really, really wants the compromise. And that's where the United States, I think, needs to focus in order to create the groundwork for a true compromise on both sides.
So what does the United States then need to do?
They need to continue to try and create the proximity talks, but they need to bring all factors into the coalition, all people at the table, and they need to build a far greater confidence-building process where more Israeli Jews see it in their interest to pressure their government to make a deal with the Palestinians. That's not the case right now, or at least it's not sufficiently the case in order to create this paradigm shift.
And what role do you think Secretary Clinton can play in that effort?
Well, I think Secretary Clinton has a huge budget of the State Department, and that budget should be redirected to the kind of investments in Israel and Palestine that would really shift the populations towards a commitment to peace. And there isn't enough of that right now.
We said that this is the worst that U.S.-Israeli relations have been in several decades. Politically, financially, economically, what does that mean for the United States?
I think that the United States is probably going to stay a strategic ally of Israel for the foreseeable future, but I also think that they are going to be making more overtures to the region in order to create regional stability, and they have serious concerns in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Right.
And those are going to overtake some of the priorities of constantly defending Israel in the United Nations and other places. So we may see a slippage of the solid defense of Israel. And that's unfortunate for Israel, and it really requires some shifts in thinking in the Israeli electorate.
Okay, we'll see what happens. Thank you so much, Dr. Marc
Thank you.
Gopin. Appreciate you being here.